Hello and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. Today we are looking at two teas, both from Eco Cha, and they are both oolongs from Jade Mountain or Yushan in Taiwan. On my left we have the Spring Harvest 2025, and on my right we have the Winter Harvest 2025. Just to give the teas their proper name, they are the eco-farmed High Mountain Oolong tea, limited edition series from Eco Cha, and we're looking for in terms of the flavor profile, nutmeg, honey, vegetable pastry, maybe sweet and some spicy notes as well. Plenty of information about the origins of these teas on the website, and let's move on to looking at the packaging and the tea. Back in a moment. Here we are looking at the external packaging for our two teas from Eco Cha that are from Jade Mountain or Yushan. As you can see from the information we're given, these are both part of the limited edition range, and they are eco-farmed High Mountain Oolong tea. And we have a basic flavor profile down here, and in both cases it's nutmeg, honey, vegetable, and we're told that it's whole leaf oolong tea in both cases, and undoubtedly these characters will be replicating that information there. I just want to turn the two packages sideways because we get some of the same essential information plus also the point at which they differ. What we have are the tasting notes: nutmeg, honey, pastry aroma. We can expect something that's balanced, sweet, savoury character, green leafy vegetable and mild curry note, clean, subtle, spicy finish. That's for both. The harvest is hand-picked small batch from Xi'an from Taiwan at 1200 meters. And of course, here we have the spring 2025 tea, and here we have the winter 2025 tea. And in both cases, the proposed brewing guide is 9 grams of tea and 300 mils of water, 95 degrees centigrade, steep for 3 minutes. So that's essentially a Westerner teapot style, although of course it's open to multiple steeps. So now let's take a look at the tea, the inner packaging. Now we turn to the inner packaging, and what you'll note to start with is that the inner packaging from Eco Cha teas comes in this kind of corrugated cardboard or thick paper. So what we're going to do is remove that paper, and then we'll be able to see the tea a bit more clearly. Sorry that all you can see is my hands for the moment. What I'm going to do is flatten these down. Hopefully that will help with the glare. So what you find is that we've got the same black label, Eco Cha, ecocha.com, eco-farmed High Mountain Oolong tea in 75 gram vacuum drawn out and vacuum sealed packaging. So let's move on to looking at the tea inside. Welcome to the Westerner teapot style review part of our video, and you notice we've actually got 4 teas to look at, although technically it's 2 steepings of 2 teas. On my left we've got a first steep and a second steep from Eco Cha's Yushan offering, Spring 2025, and on my right the 2 steeps from their Winter 2025 offering from Yushan. Now the technical name, we've already said it many times, is the eco-farmed High Mountain Oolong tea, and it's from that limited edition range. The inner jugs here are the first steep, and the outer jugs are the second steep. So let's take a look at the 2 first steeps. Pretty much the same color, I would say. Maybe there's a touch more yellow in the Winter Harvest. I'm trying desperately not to get these confused. And let's take a look at the second steeps. In this time round, I would say the Spring Harvest is fared a little better, if you want to put it that way, and is a little more intense in its yellow color than the Winter. At least it is to my eyes. Not sure the camera's quite picking that up. So let's try the aroma. Let's try the first steep for the spring. There is something cereally there, and a little bit of sweetness. Maybe a touch of fruit. The winter first steeping. Creamy, much more creamy. Touch of a vegetable note. And still some of that kind of baked cereal-y quality. Very intriguing. So definitely more creaminess on the winter one. Let's try the second steeping. Oh, a lot of really sweet fruit on the spring second steep there. Masses of fruit has come out there. And on the winter second steep, bit of cream, and a little bit of cereal. Okay, so the winter seems to be, at least on aroma, leaning more into the cream, and the spring seems to be leaning more into the fruit, at least on the second steep. So let's try drinking spring first steep. I might do both springs. Okay. A lot of fruit there on the cup. Something cereally, still definitely there, adding a little bit of body and richness to it. Flavours dropping off slightly, which may explain why there's more fruit on the second. Light to medium body. Cereal, it's very smooth. Little bit of sweetness and fruit. Let's try the second steep. Much more intense on the cup. It hasn't lost the cereal quality, but it has picked up a lot of sweetness and a lot of fruit. Flavours dropping off slightly. The second one is slightly drying, but only slightly. And I think there's probably a happy medium there. Now, I find if I use too much tea, I really can't taste it. All I get is a sort of tannins, even if it's steeped properly. But just looking at the brewing instructions there again, the brewing parameters. The first steep from the spring isn't drying at all. And it's smooth. The flavour's dropping off pretty quickly. Doesn't have that much more intense fruit and sweet on the second one. But that is more drying on the second. Let's try the winter first steeping. Loads of cream on the cup there, as we've already said. Really cereal. Really, really cereally, creamy. It really is like a warm bowl of cereal, because you've got the kind of creaminess coming through as well, which can kind of trick you if you mentally squint a bit and make you think, oh wow, that's warm milk and cereal. That's really what we're getting, warm milk and cereal. Let's try the second steep. That one's definitely going to need to move across. I wouldn't brew that one for any longer. And you can't go much higher than up to 100. But I feel just slightly it's dropping off, just slightly, whether you need to touch more tea or touch longer. I'm not sure longer. Maybe slightly hotter. You could tweak that to make an absolutely ideal first steep. That second steep is, I would say the body is the same. You're looking at medium, straight up medium. Still plenty of cream, but now it's texture, not taste. The cereal is still there, but there's a vegetal note that's crept in. It's really not sweet. It really is, for the first steep, it's cereal and milk, cereal and hot milk, really. The second one, the cream has become texture now, and the cereal has picked up some vegetal notes as well. The kind of flavor profiles that are mentioned here: nutmeg, honey, pastry aroma, balanced sweet savory character, green leafy vegetable, mild curry notes, clean subtle spicy finish. Now, I don't have the skill set to pick up all of that, but you're getting the cereal and the vegetal and the cream here. You're getting fruit and plenty of sweetness here on the spring. Am I getting something like pastry? I suppose so, yes. You could argue that what I'm calling cereal is like a pastry aroma, something cooked, a cooked grain-based product. That would make sense as well. But very different characters. Loads of fruit on the spring, although I feel as if neither of my two steepings are quite doing the tea justice, which isn't a reflection on the tea. However, with the winter, we're almost there for both. Really almost there, I would say. Now, I realise I haven't actually mentioned the parameters. I've gone back to my standards, 95 degrees centigrade, 150 mils of water per 3.5 grams of tea, and each steep for both teas is 3.5 minutes. And that's slightly off for the spring, almost bang on for the two winter steeps. Really, really good showing. In fact, I'm going to try a touch more of that just while I finish my thoughts off. Yeah, if you get a good, I don't want to say inhale, you would choke, but if you take a good breath in through the tea, cereal, pastry, definitely, really, really definitely there. Pity I'm not picking up any spice, but maybe try that second steeping and see if I'm picking up anything spicy, nutmeggy there. I wouldn't say so, but there's plenty of fruit and plenty of sweet, but nothing that would make you go, oh, we're now heading over in. That said, he says, not finishing a sentence, there is, especially in the winter, that slightly savoury note, which you could say is like a savoury spice. Okay, a really interesting showing. Both teas have done well, despite my brewing parameters not being quite right for the spring, but we've got sweet and fruitiness for spring. We've got cream, lots of cereal, grainy quality, and for the winter. So let's see. We're going to begin with a Gongfu for the spring, which we'll move on to next. And then at the end of the video, we'll do our second Gongfu for the winter. Let's see if we can pick up that fruit and sweet in our first Gongfu for spring. See you in a moment. This is the first of our two Gongfu sessions for this video. This is for the Spring Harvest 2025 of the offering from Yushan or Jade Mountain. The tea is going to be at 95 degrees centigrade. We've got 3 grams of tea, not sure how well you can see it. Oh, just a little. I've got the camera set at a new angle, which I think means it doesn't look like the top of my head's being cut off, but I'm not sure it's very good for seeing much else. And we'll have 50 mils per steeping as usual. Got my stopwatch here so I know how long the steepings are, and I've got my notepad here just so I can take a record of how long they are as well. So, given everything is now pre-warmed, I think we can start. This tea for the Western, I didn't quite do it justice in terms of the parameters, almost as if there was some way that we could have sliced the Western to get a different kind of flavour profile somewhere between the two steepings. So I'm interested to see how that manifests when we really are slicing it very carefully, so to speak. or fractionating the tea brewing when it comes to Gongfu. So there's the 3 grams while everything is still warm. We'll check in at 35 and we'll see where we go from there. There's our 50. Anything popping? Some popping. I think the fact that the stalk material is so prominent is probably going to almost pull the tea beads apart, even if the leaves themselves aren't fully hydrated. I noticed that on a tea I reviewed very recently. I didn't remark about it on camera, but I thought these leaves have been sort of almost wrenched into a unfurled state without being wet. So coming up, this is 40 seconds. A little bit of the cereal, just a tiny touch of something there. I think we'll push that a bit further and see where we get. We'll check in again at 55. Okay, we'll call it a minute to start with. There's a minute. Slightly vegetal, slightly cereally, but not much more. As I suspected, although the tea beads themselves are pretty dry, you might be able to see that, whoops, especially if I drop it, that the stalk material is starting to hydrate already. What kind of aroma have we got here? Again, slightly creamy, slightly vegetal, slightly sweet. Just making sure I got the spring, because that sounds more like the winter one, but I did take the tea from the spring. Okay, let's pour that out. And we'll take a look at the colour while that cools. That is a pretty straightforward white tea colour, that silver note. Very nice. Is it changing as it cools, the aroma that is? The cream is becoming a little more prominent, but that's about it. And that's what is there, just a faint cream. I should point out that this is the spring and the winter both made from Qingxin, so that is one of the kind of flavour characteristics of Qingxin, to have a sort of creamy note, as along with florals and a lot of freshness. So that's interesting that the cream aspect has come through there. The stalks are continuing to rehydrate in the steam, so we will make some progress there and give that the next 50. I could probably get away with 50 for this steep. After that, the leaves are going to be too big, even if they're not unfurled. I think partly because those stalks can't pack neatly. So that was a minute for that one. We'll check in at 40. It's always possible that if they're unfurling rapidly, whether they want to or not, so to speak, that they won't need such a long steep. Let's check in at 40. Don't fidget, Ian. Give it a shugel if you want. Right, we'll check at 42. Bit more cream. We'll go to a minute again. And then if we have to, we can just bring them down at that point. So there's a minute. Sorry for the scraping. Bit of sweet coming through there. Sweet and cream and a touch of vegetal. If you take a look at that, you might be able to see those tea stalks are really rehydrating. In fact, if I do that, you can see that the leaves themselves are not actually really that unfurled yet, but the stalk is. And the leaves, now I seem to recall that this is an organic farm, which means that the leaves will have been bug bitten, which is going to add to the sweetness of the tea. It may explain why that leaf looks battered, not because of any error in handling or processing, but if they've been bug bitten. How very interesting. Okay. Let us take a look at the colour of the tea. We've now moved some yellow into that characteristic silvery note. So it's silvery with a yellow edge. That's really nice. Aroma has picked up some sweet and some fruit to go along with the cream. Let's see how that is on the cup. A lot more sweet and fruit on the cup. That's always the case, but it's picked up in body. It's now light medium. Flavour's still dropping off, but there's still cream there. Definitely dropping off though. Yeah, I think we're going to need more water here just to get those leaves unfurled. Let's just to cover them, that is. I think that's probably about 60. Might need more. I'm sorry, it probably really isn't very interesting watching somebody write, but I'm hoping there's a certain soothing quality to somebody being systematic and OCD about how they approach their tea reviews. I've probably mentioned many a time, I do these reviews in part to help me, to give me a structure to how I want to go through the teas that I've picked up, and to have a reason to kind of put them together side by side. Otherwise, I might lose track of what I like, what I don't like. Yeah, a lot more sweet there. That said, I have always said, and it's a true motto of mine, that it's not a hobby unless it involves an Excel spreadsheet. That's a minute 7. Which I know many people will think that is desperately sad. And it is. Cream and sweet. Again, not really. We're not really getting anything kind of defined coming through there. Oh wow, it's there on the aroma though. On the jug, my goodness. I would say there's honey there. I would definitely say there's honey there. That's moved into a much more gold colour, I would say. Yeah, I would say that's gold. Yeah, there's honey. That's good. Is there anything else to that beyond the honey? There's cream. Cream and honey, that's a nice combination. Let's pour some of that out. Cream and honey. And just wafting off, there's a lot of that. I do hope some of that comes out. Let's take a look at some of these leaves. Stalk is pretty hydrated, but you can see, I know those are small leaves, not leaves, but they're not fully hydrated. We could definitely do a 4th there. Let's try the taste. Oh, lots of cream and honey there. Let's hope it comes through on the cup. Yeah, there's a hit. Yeah. There's a hit of it. It's honey and the cream is there as texture. So you've got a creamy honey taste with a creamy texture. Flavour's still dropping off though, so there's definitely more to go. But looking at, I'm trying to see, no, there's nothing there that's completely unhydrated, still dehydrated, put it that way. So we're going to go with more water just to cover this. In fact, let me show you what I mean. That's rearranging it so we can try and get everything with equal access to the water. You can see the gaiwan is now almost up to the brim, so that's quite a lot more water. So I think that's going to be more like 100. Yep, that's 100 easily. Okay. And that will be our last steep. Yes, even as a young man, when I went to the gym, I've been to the gym at various times in my life. Even as a young man, I would take careful note of how long I could exercise for, what weights I was moving, and I would even use coloured dots to say, has my capacity gone up, or are we having an off day and it's gone down? And that's transferred itself over to every kind of hobby that I like, whether it's collecting books or CDs, or I'm not sure I collect teas, except for the white tea cakes that go into storage. So we're coming up to a minute. Not much there, but it will take longer. Maybe a honey note. It will take longer because of that extra water, but I don't want it to oversteep. I think maybe a minute 20, that seems realistic. So a minute 20, and we'll call that quits. With all realization that we have used a lot more water, but hopefully that will have meant the tea leaves have more access to the water. And there is something comes through strongly. I would say that's honey and kind of a vegetable note. Color-wise, greeny gold. Maybe you can see that. There you go, greeny gold. And now we've finally got to the kind of fruity note. Definitely sweet. Some vegetal. I'm wondering whether we'll get that honey note back. Yes, it's there. It's part of the sweetness. And there's some cream there as well. I'm wondering whether what I've been calling fruity notes or just sweetness is that the honey sort of lurking in the background, so to speak. The leaves are, yeah, they've benefited from a proper steeping. If you look at that, you can see, in fact, on my left, that leaf really has been attacked by the little, is it tea jacids that do the biting, that make the teas produce terpenes? I think that's what's processed into the honey taste. Wow, that's fascinating. So let's see how this comes across. Bit of cream, bit of sweet, bit of honey on the cup. That's it. Sweet spot. Flavor's not dropping off. Body has gone up. Honey is lingering. There's some cream, slightly savoury kind of vegetal note. That's definitely the sweet spot. I'm going to finish that steeping. So it did take 4 steepings, but it was incrementally building up to it. Once or twice we reviewed a tea where it seemed almost completely haphazard if and when it was going to hit a sweet spot. That has done. So we've picked up, at this point, the honey's come through, the cream is there, the body has gone up. Maybe the cream is what's giving that extra body as well. The flavour's not dropping off, so that's ideal. Yeah, there it is. Really, really nice for that last steep. Maybe I could have done something similar with the third steeping, I don't know. The leaves were covered. But that was quite an extended time. That was about 115, I think. I'll double check. But the point is, we've incrementally picked up from cream, a thin kind of cream. It's picked up in body, it's picked up in sweetness, we've picked up the honey, and that's what's lingering on the palate. 4th steeping, the body is increased. Now that I've put more water in so the leaves can steep more effectively. The honey is still there, the creamy texture is still there. Bit of savouriness, maybe that's a kind of cereally pastry note. A really good showing. I'm really glad we picked up the honey note. Came through a lot more clearly than the Western, I would say. So there we go, fantastic. let's move on to our second Gongfu and then we'll wrap this up. See you in a moment. Here we are in the last part of our video to undertake a second Gongfu session, this time to review the winter 2025 harvest of the Yushan Oolong from Eco-Cha, Yushan Jade Mountain. We'll keep the parameters as they were for the previous Gongfu, so we'll have 3 grams of tea, the water's at 95, it'll be 50 mils per steeping, just to double check there's plenty of water in the kettle, and we will, of course, take careful note of the times and whatnot. I noticed the stalk, you almost certainly won't be able to see that, but the stalk material is really prominent in this winter one, so that's going to really affect how the leaves unfold. One thing I will say, and it's been a relief, certainly compared to some of the Gongfus I've done recently, the spring really responded well to Gongfu. It's not to say the first or the second steepings were ideal, but you got that serial, S-E-R-I-A-L, improvement, if that's the right word. The body goes up, the flavor profile goes, it becomes more complex. It starts to get to the point where you can unpick it and say, right, we've got this and this and this and this. Especially that honey note, that was really good. So I do hope that the winter is going to respond equally cooperatively. So everything's been pre-warmed. Let's move that out of the way so it doesn't get wet. And let's begin. I think, yeah, we'll check in at 45 again. I'm going to try a little experiment here. Given the tea beads are still dehydrated, they don't need much room. I'm actually putting slightly less water. I put in 40 mils for that one, just to see if that intensifies the flavor that we do get. That might make it easier to start discussing what we're picking up. So we're coming up to 40. And we'll check in at 45. Ooh, a lot of cream there, a lot already. Although the beads themselves aren't really unfurled, that's really impressive. Maybe give that a minute, let's play it safe. Actually, it's coming about a minute. 2, just to be precise. Cream, sweet, and vegetable already. Wow. And maybe that is to do with the, I beg your pardon, to do with using less water. Interesting. So the beads are rock. Slightly tender on the outside. It's like little rocks, but with a bit of velvet around them. Quite poetic, but I like that. That's quite true. Even the stalk material, if it would stop falling out, hasn't really started to rehydrate. The colour, not quite white tea. There's a hint of yellow has crept in, so it's a silvery yellow colour. Cream and sweetness already. And something cereally, as in savoury. Much the same on the cup, but the sweetness, as always, is more intense. It's dropping off, it's a first steep, but there's sweetness, there's cream, there's savoury. That's interesting. I didn't really think about the flavour profile as recommended, but when I thought savoury there was kind of a spice note. Interesting. I think that was a good idea, using less water, just to intensify the flavour. I wonder if I can arrange that, as in arrange the beads, to do that again. I would say that's about the same again. And And then we'll just add more. It may stop working. It may get to the point where the leaves have expanded too much for the amount of water I put in which case we're not extracting flavour enough. Let's give that a shoogle. We're going to take a quick peek to see if that has happened at 35. Not yet, still looking good. Bit of cream even at 35 seconds. Wow. Excuse me. Although I suspect the last one, if we do go for fourth, will be a galumphing volume of water. If we get these beads to properly unsteep, I'm going to have to pour that out. All right, we're coming up to a minute. That's a minute. We're going to go a minute 5. Actually, minute 7 now. Cream and savoury. Yeah, just something creamy and savoury. Not strictly speaking vegetal, I would say. Let's have a look at those tea beads. Yeah, they are still pretty hard. I think the next steeping will need to use maybe 60. Give them some extra room to manoeuvre. There's a good smell coming from here. Creamy and savoury with the slightest element of sweet. Very rich though. Oops. Let's just finish that. Sorry, we just look at the colour. Yeah, we've moved into greeny yellow now. Hopefully you can see that. I haven't really left a lot in the jug. Yeah. Even cooled, it's still creamy and savoury predominantly. And on the cup, not much sweetness on the cup either. Yeah, creamy and savoury. Yeah, almost a curry note. That's interesting. Still dropping off, but yeah, it's not a tannic edge. It's not really drying either. Just that sense of something quite savoury. Right, to get everything covered, we're probably about 80. Wow, okay. As I say, I suspect that has a lot to do with how well the leaves, the material can be arranged in the gaiwan. Didn't really take a close enough look at that. We'll double check once we've drained the tea. We will take a check at the aroma at 45. Yep, really savoury and spicy. No, it's slowed down a little, but that's understandable now that we're dealing with a bit more water. So we'll push that to maybe minute 10, maybe a touch longer. That would only be 5 seconds longer. We might need a minute 15, something like that. Maybe even a minute 20 at this. Yeah, we'll call that a minute 20. There's a definite spicy note lingering on the palate. Not spicy as in a hot spice, but just something savoury. Maybe that's what you get when you kind of combine tannic plus a strong savoury note. Very interesting. More vegetal coming through on the cup. Maybe a bit of cereally aspect as well. How are the leaves? Largely, that's getting there. It's going to need a fourth steeping for a full show. Yeah, if you look at those ones, they're not really unfurled at all. Just need to give them a bit of room in the gaiwan so that they can benefit from their fourth steep. Right. Colour-wise, oh, Gold with a green edge, I would say. Gold, yeah, that's right. Ooh. Cream and savoury, but there is something sweet in there. Not really vegetal. Something slightly heady, slightly perfumey. See what that's like as it cools, see if that changes the parameters, the aroma. What I'm asking is, given this is later in the season, I wonder if it's going to have a sort of tea jassied honey note. Because there's definitely some sweetness in there. Okay, so now sweetness has come into the mix. Just on the edge on the cup there. Body's a little thin, but the creaminess is promising a lot more body. I think a false steeping will do that. Flavour's dropping off slightly. And there's the savoury and there's the sweet. All really, really complementary. Really nice, that. So our fourth steeping, definitely fine, I promise, will be, let's fill it again. Let's go up to about 100 there, I think, just to be safe. Yeah, that is it all covered. That's 100 mils, I would say. Sorry. Going to be a nightmare recording this in the description box, trying to remember what I've said. Well, I don't need to remember, but trying to find a way to notate it. I'm not sure anybody actually looks at what's in the description box. I do try to have a little joke for myself. If I have a Gongfu that doesn't work, just because the tea's not suitable, or because I can't get it to work, which is not the same thing, I usually just put, nope, don't bother recording it, though there was one tea which won't have gone live yet. The video won't have gone live, where I was so emphatic about it not being suitable for Gongfu, I just went, just nope. Just don't even think about it. It's just, the game's not worth the candle. Sometimes Western / Teapot is the way to go. So we're now coming up to 80 seconds, a minute 20. Now it's going to need longer. Especially with so much more water. Let's go for 135. It's warming up the guy well, so you know something's happening. Right, there we go. A minute 35. More cream and vegetable, but some sweetness to that. Right. Colour has come down a smidge. Still, but yellowy green rather than a kind of goldy green. So I think it's lost a little intensity of colour. But on the other hand, it's picking up something almost floral there. Something slightly floral. And that we might get more of that as it cools. Cream is still there. Yeah, really, there's something volatile that's coming through just now. Sweet, really sweet now. With a hint of the savoury, just a hint of kind of savoury cereal note. That's really interesting. That's not what the Western brought out of this winter one. Same way, I'm double checking again that it's the winter harvest, because the Gongfu is bringing out really, really different kinds of aspects of the tea. In fact, we're going to let that cool just a touch more while we check on the leaves. Yeah, these are soft. These are tender. Just let you have a look at them. These are tender and well hydrated. Yeah, there you go. It could get more steepings, don't get me wrong. Just looking to see if there's any damage of the sort of little biting insect variety, which would explain that sort of strong sweetness that's just come through. I can see the oxidized edge to the leaves. I always like seeing that. But I'm not seeing any sort of biting on them. So maybe this is something that you can get with the Ching Shin if you get it just right. Or it's the terroir, because Yushan is going to add its own terroir. Yeah, definitely it's lost some of that volatility, but there's sweetness in there. I wouldn't say fruit, nothing, it is honey. I would say a honey note. Honey and still some cream and still some savoury. Very interesting. Let's see how that comes across. Unsurprisingly, masses of sweetness on the cup. That's almost too far. Almost too far. I would say just a touch too much water. So maybe dial that back to another 80, barely covering the leaves. Mind you, I'm getting more as it's cooling, but still that's probably as long as steep as it could manage. Body is light to medium, so it has maybe just a touch too much water. But the sweetness is lingering on the palate. The creaminess is adding to the texture, and there's a savoury element backing it up. Okay. The sweetness definitely lingering. So, what can we say? The spring has definitely reacted better to Gongfu than the Western, I would say. It's been a lot more able to sort of delineate the different flavour aspects of the flavour profile. The Winter's responded pretty well to Gongfu, though it was a pretty good showing on the Western as well. That last steep is a disappointment, but that's just me for misjudging. Maybe drop that by 5 seconds and drop the water, and you would get the intensity back without any kind of drying notes and any tannic quality. Very, very good showing for both of those. I love the honey note on the spring. I like the kind of bug bitten aspect. I love the creaminess in the body on the winter. I love the sort of high floral notes with some of the cream on the spring as well. Really, really interesting and very different. Really, very different. That said, I wasn't expecting that sweetness in the last round for the winter there on the Western, really. So hopefully you'll have picked up something there about this tea and how it responds. Both these are Miko Cha. If you're interested, I will say, as a matter of courtesy, on my part, not your part, my part, I will say as a matter of courtesy, these are from Eco Charm, remind you of that. The tea is well worth pursuing, reacts very well to Gongfu, and I'm sure if you tweaked it right, you'd be okay with the Western as well for the spring. A very good showing, really enjoyable, highly recommended, even though that's not what we're really doing in these mini-series. So, happy steeping, and God bless.